Thanks so much for coming back to our latest edition of Econ Talks. Infometrics Senior Economist Brad Olsen, joined by our Chief Forecaster Gareth Kennan. And look, we've just come back from Queenstown after a pretty busy but fun-filled 2 days down there on a bit of economic reconnaissance and stimulus. How did you find it?
Yeah, look, remarkably quiet down there actually. I've been down there during the school holidays and it was busy, lots of Aucklanders, but of course with the lockdown in Auckland at the moment, that's cut a big chunk of their market. And of course with no international tourism, it was just quite eye-opening to see how little was going on there really, and obviously heavily impacting many of the operators and businesses down there.
Absolutely, and look, the latest figures from MB show that to the end of last week, I think it was, spending across New Zealand down nearly 20% year on year. For the likes of Auckland, funnily enough, down 44%. It's a huge hit. But the likes of Otago even down 15%. They're really hurting from not having those Aucklanders come into the region. What I found really striking was it was very obvious that Queenstown was quieter than normal. Every tourism operator told you that, every person on the street told you that, but there was an incredible resilience there. They are definitely trying to make their way through it, and they're quite excited by having more Kiwis in their own neck of the woods. And I guess with Air New Zealand announcing that flights from next week are pretty fully booked with Aucklanders getting out of Dodge, it does give you a bit of confidence that we can get that domestic tourism market going again, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the strength of the response in terms of domestic tourism with the inability to travel overseas, I mean, that has been one of the positives compared to our thinking, 3 or 4 months ago at the height of the original lockdown. Still, for me, I have real concerns, I think, about just the number of jobs that are still being sustained by the wage subsidy and its extension. And I think not just in Queenstown, but certainly through a lot of other hospitality and tourism-related businesses throughout the country, that there will be more job losses coming through in the next 3 months. And it still feels to me like it's a bit of a slow train wreck, and we've escaped the worst of it so far, but that unfortunately that means the worst is still yet to come.
What I think I found really interesting with that was that those tourism centres have taken a very sharp knock because of the Auckland lockdown, but there's also been that wider effect, I guess, of people that have really not going to their offices as much. We've seen people work from home so much more very quickly with the second lockdown. In Wellington, talking to some of the hospitality operators around, they are still doing it incredibly tough, even though we're not one of the major tourism hotspots in a sense. So these reverberations continue to, I guess, move out. The bigger issue, though, is I think what came across quite clearly in Queenstown is that they are serious and acknowledge that international tourism just simply isn't going to come back anytime soon. That is not a quick return. We're barely able to have a few thousand people come over the borders every month into managed isolation. International tourism seems to be off for at least a few years down the track.
Yeah, and I think one of the strengths of the private sector, and particularly people who've started up their own business, is that they are can be quick to adapt. They're obviously entrepreneurial, and therefore in that respect looking to see how they can change their business model, change their plans to be able to survive in what is obviously a very difficult but a very different environment as well. And so taking those steps. Not everyone's going to be successful obviously, but at least they're doing their darndest to try and get through this.
Absolutely, and look, I mean, it was fantastic to be in Queenstown. It was useful to understand how that was working in one of the major tourism hotspots. Some very, very sobering news and outlook coming from some of those operators, but again, some incredible resilience. Those guys are doing it tough, but they are trying to make the best of a very bad situation. So that's useful moving forward. Look, thanks so much, guys, for joining us on this edition of our Econ Talks. We'll be back again soon with something else to discuss. Cheers.